Hello everyone, on this presentation I'm going to talk about virtual machines and its applications. First, let's see the content of this presentation. First, I'm going to give you an introduction to virtualization and few benefits of it. Then I'm going to talk about bare metal hypervisors and hosted hypervisors. Then we are going to talk about what is a virtual machine and types of virtual machines and how a virtual machine works. Then we are going to see what are some types of softwares we can use for virtualization or to make virtual machines. Finally, we are going to talk about what is the advantage of virtual machines and disadvantage of it. And first, what is virtualization? Virtualization is the process of running a virtual instance of a computer system in a layer abstracted from the actual hardware. Most commonly, it refers to running multiple operating systems on a computer system simultaneously. Virtualization abstracts hardware that allows multiple workloads to share a common set of resources. On shared virtualized hardware, a variety of workloads can co-locate while maintaining full isolation from each other, freely migrate across infrastructure and scale as needed. And simply, virtualization is a collection of software technologies that enable software application to run on virtual hardware. Virtualization via virtual machines and hypervisors or virtual machine systems. A virtual machine, also called a guest machine, is a software simulation of a hardware platform that provides a virtual operating environment for guest operating systems. A hypervisor, also called a virtual machine monitor, or abbreviated as VMM, is a software program that runs on an actual host hardware platform and supervises the execution of the guest operating system on the virtual machines. And what are the benefits of virtualization? Especially in businesses, they tend to gain significant capital and operational efficiencies through virtualization because it leads to improved server utilization and consolidation, dynamic resource allocation and management, workload isolation, security and automation. Virtualization makes on-demand self-provisioning of services and software-defined orchestration of resources possible, and scaling anywhere in a hybrid cloud on-premise or off-premise per specific business needs. And there are two types of hypervisors. Two types of virtualization via virtual machines based on the type of hypervisor used are Type 1 hypervisor, also called a native or a bare metal hypervisor, is hosted directly on the underlying hardware. Then second one, Type 2 hypervisors, also called a hosted hypervisor, is hosted on top of a host operating system. You can see on this diagram the difference between bare metal and hosted hypervisors. Hosted hypervisor is not directly connected to the host hardware platform. They are connected via a host operating system, but on a bare metal hypervisor, it connects directly to the host hardware platform. So you can get the idea of looking at this diagram about bare metal and hosted hypervisors. Bare metal hypervisor is mostly used for server virtual machines. There is a significant performance difference between bare metal and hosted hypervisors due to hosted hypervisors only having access to hardware through the hosted operating system, not like on a bare metal hypervisor which has direct hardware access. To minimize this performance difference, modern expensive motherboard chipset has VTD feature which enable direct input-output and PCI devices access to the hardware on a hosted hypervisor. In addition to the motherboard chipset, support both CPU and system firmware like BIOS or UEFI need to fully support the virtualization function for it to be usable. And what is the difference between hardware virtualization versus emulation? Hardware virtualization is not the same as hardware emulation. In hardware emulation, a piece of hardware imitates another, while in hardware virtualization, a hypervisor or a piece of software imitates a particular piece of computer hardware or the entire computer. Furthermore, a hypervisor is not the same as an emulator. Both are computer programs that imitate hardware, but their domain of use in language differs. And there are two types of virtualization: full virtualization and para-virtualization. In full virtualization, the virtual machine simulates enough hardware to allow an unmodified guest operating system, which is designed for the same instruction set to be run in isolation. And in para-virtualization, the guest apps are executed in their own isolated domains as if they are running on a separate system, but a hardware environment is not simulated. Guest programs need to be specially modified to run in this environment. And you can see on this diagram the architectural comparison between full virtualization and para-virtualization, and this hardware-assisted virtualization is type of full virtualization. And then we can talk about what is a virtual machine. In computing, a virtual machine is the virtualization or simply a imitation of a computer system. Virtual machines are based on computer architectures and provide functionality of a physical computer. Their implementation may involve specialized hardware, software, or combination. And there are two types of virtual machines: system virtual machines and process virtual machines. First, we are going to talk about system virtual machines. System virtual machines provide a substitute for real machine. They provide functionality needed to execute entire operating systems, and a hypervisor uses native execution to share and manage hardware, allowing for multiple environments which are isolated from one another yet exist on the same physical machine. Modern hypervisors or virtual machines use hardware-assisted virtualization and virtualization-specific hardware and primary from host CPUs. And then process virtual machines are designed to execute computer programs in a platform-independent environment like IBM Cloud Containers. Even major anti-malware softwares like Kaspersky use these process virtual machine features, and the Microsoft Windows 10 uses their own hypervisors to provide isolated browsing, exploit mitigation, and memory integrity protection modules as long as the virtualization is supported by the motherboard, chipset, and the CPU. And then we're going to talk about how a virtual machine works. In operating system level virtualization, a physical service virtualized at the operating system level, enabling multiple isolated and secure virtualized servers to run on a single physical server. The guest operating system environments share the same running instance of the operating system as the host system. The same operating system kernel is also used to implement the guest environments, and the applications running in each guest environment view it as a standalone system. Then let's see what are the virtual machine softwares we can use to make virtual machines. The virtual machine softwares are a type of software that allows us to run an operating system within another operating system, and they are also called hypervisors. There are a few popular virtual machine softwares like KVM, VMware Workstation, VMware Fusion. Hyper-V is the native hypervisor by Microsoft in Windows 10, and also Windows Virtual PC, Xen, Citrix, Oracle Virtual Machine Servers for Spark, VirtualBox, and Parallel Workstation. There are some few popular virtual machine softwares. And what are the advantages and disadvantages of virtual machines? Advantages of virtual machines are it let us emulate different system architectures while allowing execution of software applications and operating systems written for another CPU architecture. And also isolation the host PC, like we can use it to test malware and viruses for their behavior and effects without harming the host PC. And also high availability, which is important for servers. It treats high availability clusters to minimize the downtime. and the reduction of cost. By using virtual machine, you can allow for redundancy and failover that was previously only possible via purchasing additional expensive hardware. And scalability is the ability of a computing process to be used or produced in a range of capabilities. And also backup with fast recovery. It creates a test environment that is a mirror image of the production. And there are a few disadvantages of virtual machines too. They are the difficult indirect access to hardware, and capacity of RAM should be larger because we must reserve a specific amount of RAM for the virtual machine to operate. And also, just like the RAM, we have to reserve a certain amount from the hard disk space to the virtual machine. And also, virtual machines is less efficient than an actual machine when it accesses the host hard drive indirectly. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.